My name's Simon Learmount. I'm director of the MBA programs here at Judge Business School. I work on corporate governance and I teach a lot of what we call management practice here. I've had a long-standing interest in Asia. I've spent a lot of time out in Japan working on governance issues there and more generally, I suppose, business and society. And more recently I've been spending a lot of time in China and have been working with a lot of business people out there trying to understand how business operates in that fantastic economy. China's a really interesting place at the moment, as I think everyone knows. Over the past few decades, China has moved from being a very closed, agrarian-based economy through a series of phases which have, kind of increasingly opened it up. But these have been done in I suppose, a fairly piecemeal way and in a fairly controlled way. And what we have now is a largely manufacturing-based, export-led economy. And as we all know, that's produced enormous growth in China over the last few years in particular. And now, as everyone knows, it's the second largest economy in the world. But really interestingly, the government, in particular through President Xi Jinping, have decided that they want to embark on a new phase of economic development. And the president talks about this in terms of China and Chinese people being able to realise the Chinese dream. And what this means is, really moving on to those next stages, changing the economy so that it has more kind of, I suppose, free market characteristics. In the recent third plenum, they talked about the free market playing a decisive role in the allocation of resources, and we think that's something that's quite a bold and certainly a challenging statement. It means effectively that the government's going to lessen the reins of control and allow market forces to flourish. And what that might also mean is the forces of innovation and creativity might be allowed to flourish in China. So it's a really, really exciting time to be thinking about China and to be, I suppose, engaged with what's going on there. It's really important that this business school is engaged with China and I suppose the Asian region generally. Anyone who's been out there will know that the place is really buzzing. I mean, China in particular is not an emerging economy, it's a fast developing economy. CJBS is a global school. We bring students in from all across the world and we're engaged with kind of global business issues. It's really, really important that we're represented there. For the MBA program, it's also important that we are engaging with this region. A lot of our students now come from Asia and from China in particular. The issues that we need to be addressing as a business school with these students are come out of engagement with China. So, for example, marketing products. You can understand marketing in kind of very, very general terms, but what does it mean to have kind of new consumers in an economy like China's? People who are actually suddenly very wealthy. What's their attitude to brands? What's their attitude to new technology and innovative goods and so on? I mean, this is stuff that we need to understand as a business school. It's stuff that our students who are going out to work in these organisations need to have a good grasp of. There are operational issues now which are incredibly important for our MBA students to be able to think about and reflect upon. So, for example, manufacturing in a global economy is very different from what it was 20 years ago. We now have global supply chains. What does that actually mean for the way that you organise a manufacturing operation? We can really understand these things if we are not just kind of thinking about globalisation in abstract terms, but we're actually engaged with these particular regions. One important reason for us to engage with an economy like China is there's so many new interesting issues arising. One of the particular things that I'm particularly keen to explore is this issue around the role of business in society. Because of the nature of the development of businesses, companies, firms and so on in China, there are lots of absolutely fascinating kind of processes, ideas and so on that we can explore. For example, one of the things that struck me when I first started going out to China perhaps 20 or 30 years ago is that when I spoke to young people and asked them about what motivated them to kind of engage in business or be entrepreneurs and so on, was they said, I want to be rich, but I want my country to be rich. And I thought that's kind of quite fascinating because there's the self-interest there, which is a kind of very strong motivating factor, but at the same time there's this idea that it's doing good for society more broadly, so it's good for you and it's good for the country. In very recent times though, when I've asked people the same question, the response I often get is, I want to be rich. Okay, so that raises this issue. Where's the benefit to society going? Are people kind of understanding that? So this is one issue that I'm exploring with Wang Shi. We're writing a book and carrying out research at the moment to look at the kind of moral dimensions, the ethical dimensions of business. China, as many people know, can be portrayed as a place where ethical values and so on are not as strong. I'm not sure that's the case, but there is clearly something going on, and it needs to be explored. So a good business school is able to kind of carry out this kind of research and really understand what's going on. This business school engages with China in a variety of different ways. And that's one of the strengths. We have this multi-dimensional, multifaceted approach to the, I suppose, the study of China and business in China. So, for example, we have our executive education function, which is working with most of the leading Chinese banks to help them think through their globalisation issues. For a long time these banks have been primarily domestic institutions, but of course as companies expand, as China becomes more active in the global economy, they need to have their operations outside of China. So this business school is doing some great work at the moment, helping those institutions think about the skills, the knowledge, the processes and so on that they need to transform themselves into multinational or global institutions. We're also running, for example, programs with leading Chinese entrepreneurs. They typically have been very successful domestically because, of course, China has this massive domestic market. But increasingly they're having to think about how they adapt their organisations, how they have to adapt their cultures, their organisational processes and so on, to take account of their increasing kind of interdependence with other economies around the world. So we're doing some really interesting work with these entrepreneurs. We're doing interesting work with banks, and the knowledge that we gain from that interaction feeds through directly to the teaching then that we do on our MBA programs, with our MPhins, with our PhDs and so on. On March 25th, we're hosting a forum in Beijing with policymakers, with entrepreneurs and with academics, where we're going to be looking at these very, very important issues, where the Chinese economy is moving, and we're doing it in a very, very interesting way. I think it would be quite easy for a university-based business school to go to a place like China and peddle ideas. I mean, that's, kind of talk about, in I suppose, a normative way, things that we think China ought to be considering and so on. But that's simply not the kind of thing that we feel would be helpful either for China or valuable in general terms. And it's very much not in line with the kind of way that we work typically. What we want to do is promote dialogue. And Cambridge has traditionally been very good at that, convening different stakeholders, different parties and so on, bringing them together and actually helping to generate new ideas. So the idea behind this forum is to provide that environment, that kind of safe environment where people can talk from their experience about things that have worked. They can present ideas about the way the future might look, what the future might hold, and also challenge maybe received wisdom. Think broadly about policy issues and so on. So the promotion of dialogue is really, really important for this particular forum. The forum will be a great opportunity for us to learn from experience, and this is a great thing that again Cambridge does. It's a thing that we're very proud of at this business school. Practical knowledge, practical experience is really important to us. So what we have done is designed the forum to take the form of, I suppose, an exploration of a case study. Shenzhen was the first special economic zone in China. This meant that the government had a fairly laissez-faire approach to the development of the region, and it went from being basically a small fishing village, several 100,000 people, to the kind of global metropolis that it is now, with tens of millions of people living there. It's one of the most productive entrepreneurial regions of China now. In this forum, we will have the opportunity to learn from this case study, learn from the successes of entrepreneurs, learn from the successes of policymakers, kind of stepping back sometimes, maybe not needing to become so heavily involved in the kind of day-to-day activity of firms, and learning from the financial services sector as well. How do you actually produce an environment where there's the free flow of capital which services these companies who go on to grow and develop. So the practical, real life examples that we will get from this forum, I think, will be really, really instructive. The forum will also give us the opportunity to learn from the experience of Cambridge. Cambridge is known around the world for being one of the most important technology clusters. It's an incredibly innovative place, Cambridge, full of ideas, full of invention, full of discovery, and we're very, very well known for that. And what that fosters, I suppose, or maybe it is fostered by this very creative environment that we have here. Now, China has stated that it wants to become a more innovative place. Traditionally, China has been incredibly creative, incredibly innovative, but arguably over the last 100 years or so, it has become less so. Now it wants to learn from other places to enable it to kind of flourish as a centre for innovation. Cambridge certainly is going to be able to share some ideas about how this place operates, and we should be able to again have some interesting sparky dialogue between the Chinese participants and the Cambridge participants. We're really looking forward to welcoming everyone to the forum in Beijing in March. We're particularly pleased to be hearing from Xu Xiaojun, from Tang Jie, from Ma Weihua, and from Wang She. as well as our Cambridge participants, Michael Kitson, Simon Taylor and myself. Cambridge Judge Business School is really pleased to be hosting this event, but we're also really pleased to have the support of the Shenzhen Business Elites Union, the Wang Ke Foundation, the media partners, Chinese Weekly, and of course the Shenzhen Chamber of Commerce.